Welcome to Connect One-on-One with Youth Plus Africa, where brilliant minds are able to share bold ideas on how they're transforming the lives of many in the innovative sector, in entrepreneurship, and even in the field of agriculture. And today we are so delighted to have one bold person who has been able to revolutionize agriculture and technology, and she's here to share great insight on how she has been able to do this. I am your host, Derek Were, and this is a podcast that is beyond conversation. So without wasting time, permit me to invite our guest to introduce herself and to briefly tell us about who she is and what she does. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Quinta Onditi. My background is very diverse. I started my journey in the research and development field. From there, I grew into a variety of spaces, especially within technology. I began my journey in tech initially just being curious around what is technology, what are the roles within technology, and what's my role within the roles in technology. And so as I transitioned from research, my focus was more around data, making data-driven decisions. I found that the tasks that I ran were very mundane, and I was very interested in seeing what ways could I support the space which I was working in, right? So I began with convenings at African Women in Technology. It was a great platform for me not to just learn about roles within tech, but interact with women who are currently working within the tech space. From African Women in Technology, I built the confidence to really laser focus on what specifically I wanted to do in tech, and that was data. Within data, I was able to find a startup that's based in India, Delhi, that does data. They're called Atlan. And Atlan offers, at that time, we had a software as a service product that was more centered around data collection and visualization. We then rethought the business model and it transitioned into infrastructure. Outside of Atlan, I've worked with quite a number of startups, including Doja, which is a KYC company. I've also supported startups within the fintech space, and that also developed an interest in me really wanting to go into the finance space. Finance then transitioning from tech to venture capital. I worked at a firm that's based out of Lagos, Nigeria, Greenhouse Capital, supporting especially women founders in the fintech space to not just get funding, but also connect them with corporates such as financial institutions, that's the banks, to support their growth. Post venture capital, I went back into technology, mostly just doing a lot of advisory support for startup founders, as well as working in the intersection of impact and technology. At Impact and Technology, I found that actually I was much more better placed to blend my passions and my interests. Interests being technology, passions being more leaning towards the impact and the development space. So that then led me to Hello Tractor, where I currently work. I lead partnerships at Hello Tractor, and it's been a very exciting career journey spanning through, as I mentioned, development into tech, into venture capital, back into technology, the intersection of impact and technology, and now working at the very core of impact for technology in Africa, in agriculture, sorry. Yes.
Quite exciting. I'm interested to know how you have been able to transition from all these fields, though it is within the same space. But how have you been able to move from one to the other?
I believe the most important thing for me was to be inspired by my passion, right? From my transition from impact to technology, when I was doing research, it was really driven by what really do I want to do from a decision-making point of view? Do I want to be the one who supports from a data collection perspective, or do I want to build the tools that really help decision makers make the decisions, right? And so when it came to helping decision makers make the decisions, that's really what inspired me, because in development world, for those who have worked in development, you know that data is really it's so crucial towards not just the extension of your project, but really deciding what the value is that the project is able to bring to its beneficiaries. And so passion was a very key thing for me. Ambition, I believe, I would say is the second thing, and just being not shy to, because my bachelor's background was in gender and development studies. I could have easily said, okay, gender and technology, these are two different fields. How will I, navigate those changes, right? But I decided that, that's the choice I want to take. Whatever I need to learn, I'm going to, put myself out there and learn as much as possible, and really try and, do the best I can within the industries that I selected to transition in, based off of not just experience, but also inspiration while working within those sectors.
Amazing. How is it like working in Africa? I'm talking about Africa, especially when it comes to being able to embrace innovation, technology, working with countries like India. You have worked with Ethiopia, Rwanda. How is it like working with the small businesses and farmers in these countries?
I think that in the African context, there's a lot of room in terms of being able to, number one, when you work, and it's not a global issue in terms of not being able to reach your customer, right? Whether you're sitting in India and working with smallholder farmers in India, or you're working with smallholder farmers in Africa, in Kenya, you are still able to have that, unique, deep interaction with your customer, who is the farmer, on a one-on-one basis. And I think that the kind of insights that I tend to feel that a lot of African farmers that we have are very, very bold, and they're very intentional about what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So that's been one key inspiration that I've seen. Also, the way that farmer groups are set up is very similar. In India, they have FPOs. Here we have cooperatives, right? And so being able to really understand, and I think the biggest thing about how we think about our industries and our sectors is it's really a fine line between what works in one continent versus what works in another continent. I think the most important thing has always been, what can we borrow from what others are doing that can really work within the African context? So the African context is very rich. There's numerous value chains to work in. The farmers are very intentional about, again, as I said, whenever we at Hello Tractor, when we're building a new product for our beneficiaries who are the farmers, we're very intentional about creating with them in mind. So we have a lot of co-creation sessions, focus group discussions, just being very intentional around how we craft those solutions, right? So at the design phase and at the execution phase. And I've seen that also in different markets in India as well. Partners who we work with there, you can see that they're very intentional about how do we progress these folks, right? You'll find that from a geopolitical perspective, or how the government really supports them, it's quite different. Subsidies in India, you'll find government giving up to 40-50%, which is huge.
Yeah.
In Kenya, or in Africa largely, it's mostly you trying to find soft money, which is grant money, to really support a lot of the incentives that you offer to the farmers, right? So that would be the disparities, but not to say that it's different. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for us to borrow and work collaboratively, just to bridge the gap to meet the goals that we have, shared goals.
Amazing. You've talked about Africa being a gold mine. And this is a platform for young people. I mean, there's so many young people who don't see Africa as a gold mine. And I want to understand, how are you able to see Africa as a gold mine? There's so many young people who want it. I mean, they desire to get into the field you're in, but they don't see it
right
the way you see it. Where is the disconnect?
I feel like Africa is, again, the world is your oyster. You don't have to think about it from an African perspective. But if you come from Africa, then there's that intrusive feeling of, I want to build for my people, I want to build for my continent, right? And when you have that mindset within you, you'll not see any barriers from, us being third world versus, countries that are first world. I think even with the current political landscape, we've seen that we are actually experiencing a lot of similar challenges, right? What they're facing over there is very similar to what we face. And so it's more about, what are you really passionate about, and how do you want to make a change, right? Being a change maker and being driven by not just the change that you want to make, but also how it benefits your target audience. And where what better place to start than home, right? You
Yeah.
always want to start from home. You want to build at home. You want to ensure that whatever you touch at home is something that you're able to actually transition into something that is not just remarkable, but is something that can benefit generations to come. And so I think my recommendation or advice to young people in Africa is to forget about the limitations. Think about what is possible. The possibilities abound. There are plenty, right? And we've seen a lot of investors really doubling down on their efforts, coming into Africa, targeting various sectors, including agriculture, including climate. So it's very evident that there's a lot of potential within Africa, and it's more for us to, as Africans, say we deserve it and we can actually deliver.
Awesome. You speak a lot about mentorship.
Right.
And now we're talking about these opportunities. And I mean, where can young people be able to tap into this field and talking about mentorship? What will you say about mentorship, or perhaps where we're going wrong as a people that we can really maximize on based on your journey and experience?
For me, in my journey, peer mentorship, I think, has been one of the most instrumental pieces. And by peer mentors, I mean people who are as ambitious as I am within the same level that I am, right? Because generations are different. The mindset is very different. We're all shaped to think about opportunities in a very different way. And so I've always found that within my age group, when I speak about an ambitious goal or I want to transition into a new space, it's not caught with a lot of criticism. It's more like, what led you to think about that? What are you thinking about in terms of how does that opportunity tie into what your end goal is, right? For your career path, it could be from a professional perspective, it could be from a personal level. So peer mentorship is a big one that I think that we negate, but it's really, really a key piece towards being able to grow within different spaces, because again, when you look at the technology field, it's largely driven by a lot of young people, a lot of Gen Zs, a lot of millennials are within the space. And so peer mentorship is a big one. In terms of industry, I would say AI and data is really hot. It's estimated that AI alone is going to contribute to $15.7 trillion of the global economy by 2030, which is really big. And without data, you do not have any AI, right? So just thinking about that and the opportunities that are there, I think the best thing that AI has shown us is that it's not limited to a sector. It's not about agriculture or finance. It can be healthcare, it can be travel, it can be whatever you need it to be, right? And so wherever you sit, thinking about opportunities that where tech can really support the work that you do and what your role is within that.
You talk about technology, and you just mentioned something to do with AI, and you'll agree with me that technology is fast evolving. How do you keep yourself ahead, and what is the secret to, being ahead so that it doesn't get you off?
Right. I think staying up to date is very key. Listening to podcasts, following mentors who are within the space, people who are already innovating that are, aligned with some of the goals that you have. Thinking about innovators who have gone above and beyond to do the impossible. Elon Musk being one of them, even though he's a very controversial figure, he has done a lot of things that people thought that, are not possible. And so think about, where you can really get as much information as you can. AI, again, has made it possible for us to get all the information that we need just from, our phones. And so I believe that in terms of the opportunity within these spaces, it's really vast, and it's more around, and not just our mindset, because technology requires you to have a very flexible mindset. You cannot be fixed on one thing. Last 2 weeks ago or a month ago, we had OpenAI as a leader. Now we have a cheaper solution that's DeepSeek, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about that and really how things shift, and it's not, that goes to our point of, it's not about where specifically you're located, because DeepSeek is Asian, OpenAI is American. It's more around what problem are you solving and how do you intend to solve that problem? And how does solving that problem really make it easier for your end users? Not only from a knowledge or accessibility perspective, but also from a perspective of can they actually afford it, right? Which is affordability is top of mind for a lot of users across the world.
Could you mention perhaps your one significant setback you have experienced in your journey and how you're able to overcome it?
I think the biggest one has been career shifts. I've chosen to be very bold and intentional around how I've shifted careers, and that has also meant that I've had to upskill in directions I never thought that I would, right? Getting into tech, having to learn code, for example, having to learn about, from a VC investment perspective, going ahead to study and do my MBA, have a finance background. All these different things, they really require a lot of discipline, and sometimes discipline is not the easiest. It's not the easiest route, but it's always very rewarding. And so, just being intentional around, at every level, at every stage I grew, or within every sector I shifted, what was the knowledge gap? And how could I fit? How fast can I, narrow that gap? And what do I need? What are the tools that I need to make sure that I'm excelling within this industry? And I think staying very hyper focused on that has really helped me also in my momentum and my growth across the various industries. In terms of challenges, I would say not just from career shift, but also from, the bias of being an African young woman, being the only Black person in an office setting, that comes with a lot of challenges where it's very easy to have that imposter syndrome. But as long as I mentioned, you're very grounded by your purpose and what you're looking to achieve, then nothing is really impossible.
Nothing is impossible. What is your biggest success and how does success look like?
My biggest success was actually when I just got into tech, my first tech role, leading business for Atlan in Africa. I was able to build a business pipeline for our product across 25 countries. And how I was able to do that is I intentionally carved out a niche for our product. And that niche was really, again, centered around my previous experience, right? Since I'd worked in development world, I knew that we really required the right tools to be able to not just secure our data, but visualize our data and be very intentional around measuring impact and reporting on the impact, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to carve out a niche really leapfrogged me and was one of my biggest successes in terms of being able to build out to the 25 countries. Yes.
My next question is about how you have been able through Hello Tractor, been able to what I can call digitize 3.5 million acres and empowered women farmers. I'm more interested to know how that has become a reality, especially dealing with the grassroots farmers. How was that possible?
At Hello Tractor, we are very, very passionate about empathetic customer centricity. What that means is at any given time, you're putting yourself in the shoes of the farmer, right? Not only embodying the perspective of the farmer, but also really looking into what the farmer needs are, listening to the farmer, really understanding what are some of the challenges that they're facing, how we are able to meet those challenges, and how our various products actually go ahead to meet these challenges, right? A big one is asset ownership. Asset ownership is a big challenge across the African continent, right? And at Hello Tractor, we've been able to bridge that gap through our pay-as-you-go financing model, where we offer financial services to smallholder farmers who want to own tractors so that they can be able to service farmers within their community, right? And we structured that based on a 5-year term contract within which they're able to make repayments, not against low season, but high season. So whenever their tractor is productive, then they do know, the amounts that they need to be sending out to us. So that's a very important piece in terms of, again, from the farmer perspective, there's high seasons and low season.
Yeah.
Bring a product to them that really takes into, account these conditions, right? We also think of ways that we can bring all our services close to the farmer. That's our hub services. Within our hubs, we offer a variety of services as well that farmers can access, including implement rentals, spare parts. We just launched our storage solution last quarter, which we're very excited about. That is intended to really mitigate post-harvest losses for farmers and ensure that as they're harvesting, they're not rushing to sell at low prices, but they're able to hold on to their commodity and sell at a time when the market conditions are better for them and they can sell at a profit. We actually had just recently a success story where a farmer was able to sell their commodity at 27% profit, which is very exciting.
Wow, you guys are doing amazing. Let's go back to young people who are on startups and there's the challenge of funding. They are likely to experience. Perhaps what are the simple steps you'd advise young people, especially who are just starting their ventures, to look at or to see how they can be able to overcome those challenges when it comes to funding?
I think the most important thing for entrepreneurs is not to be overly obsessed with the uniqueness of your product and more around, does it really fulfill a specific need for your target audience, right? And so when you look at the needs of the product, how you design your product and how it fulfills these needs is very important, because that is where you get your proof of concept, right? So once you're able to really get your feedback from, because your customers really are your wealth in terms of traction, is a really huge metric when it comes to investment. And so when you think about how you interact with your customers, how you also iterate your product very specifically towards ensuring that you're able to meet their needs, and then thinking about how that then can transition into competitive advantage for your product, right? So as opposed to thinking about how your product competes with others within the market, it's more around being intentional and thinking through what problem is my product solving and how well is it solving the problem, right? And you can only understand that from feedback from your customers. So I would say be overly obsessed with how your product is fulfilling the need that you've intended it to, and then build out from there.
Okay. What do investors look for?
Investors are looking for a variety of things. Top of mind, I would speak of product viability, ensuring that your product is actually solving for a need, as well as it's able to also bring some profit, right? This product market fit, and there's a range of, within product market fit, you're thinking about your serviceable, obtainable market, which is your larger market size. There's serviceable, addressable market, which is now the market within which you play. And then there's total addressable market. So total addressable market is your customer, your actual customers, and thinking through how you can tap into that and ensure that your product does meet the needs of that market. You also have team, which is a very big thing. A lot of investors really want to know that you're not coming just because tech is hip. You really understand the journey, and a lot of entrepreneurs within technology will tell you the amount of sacrifices that they've had to make just to grow their businesses to where they are. So when you hear founders saying their business has been in operations for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, there's a lot of work that has really gone into it. And so team is a big thing from a character, integrity, resilience perspective, how you choose the members of your team and the experience that you collectively have against the industry that you currently are playing at.
The team you choose and intentionality and the level of commitment towards your venture. Are there other perhaps common mistakes or things that especially startups ignore and fail to put in place that also play a major role in affecting their venture, other than the ones you've mentioned?
Right. I think it's more just the patience that's required to really develop a product and develop it at a very not just unique level, but at a quality that is, commensurate to what is existing within the market, right? A lot of times, with incubators, you have that opportunity to test out your product in the early stages. However, I think sometimes people jump the gun and are very quick to launch before they really have done all that they need to do, just because they're rushing for, I want to get to the point where I can really raise, because I have something to show, I have a product, right? But really think about that foundation that you're laying for your product, and how very sustainable it is, just to ensure that at the point when you get to asking and raising the money that you're raising, you don't even need to introduce yourself at that point. Your product is already speaking for you. And so I think that intentionality and not and being patient is very key.
How patient should I be patient? I mean, for
There's
how long?
I wouldn't place a timeline. We've seen founders who've built and within a very short amount of time, their products have really scaled, right? I think, just like I was saying, don't put a timeline to it. Focus on really ensuring, if there are tests that you need to run, if your target is to speak to 1,000 farmers, speak to the 1,000 farmers. Sorry, from an agricultural perspective, I would say farmers. But if it's users that you're speaking to, if it's 1,000 users, speak to the 1,000 users. If you haven't gotten the information that you needed from the 1,000, speak to 2,000, get to 5,000, right? Don't limit yourself. Ensure that the information and the value that it brings to your product is actually realized before you now start saying, you're coming out and releasing it. Because once you release it, there's a lot of things that you cannot change at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to ensure that before you actually release, you've done all that you could have done from a research perspective, from an understanding the customer's needs perspective, and from just customizing your products to ensure that it really does stand out.
Interesting. Speaking about the topic at hand, I'm interested to know, what is it that other countries are doing perhaps that we might not be doing in this space? You talked about countries where the government is fully supporting tech and agriculture. What are the other things that perhaps, especially those who are in this space, are not doing that we need to consider so that we can be ahead of the game?
I think there's a scarcity of funding, and that's something that's been spoken about by entrepreneurs within the space. To mitigate this, there's been a lot of different, stakeholders who've come together to build funds to support entrepreneurs within technology. You've seen that there's been a lot of new accelerators that have come up, like 54 Collective is Founders Factory Africa. They've been around, but there's Delta 40 as well. And as you see these people coming in, I think that it's very important that we have a diverse range of funding coming into not just Kenya, but Africa as a whole, right? And we've seen that with these collectives, there's a lot of funding coming in, not just specifically from one funder, but it's a mix of diverse funders coming together and backing up founders who really have that purpose and mission at various scales, right? So you have funders who are funding ideas at the idea stage. You have people who are funding at the pre-seed, seed level, Series A upwards, right? And so I think being able to have funders coming in at the various stages is also very key, and sort of cautions entrepreneurs from having to have that sort of scarcity mentality to say, I have to get to this point before I can access this kind of funder. But once the funder is able to open up those opportunities for you to come at any stage that you are, then that makes it much more easier for you as an entrepreneur to also know that there's that opportunity to actually start from somewhere.
Start from somewhere. What are the myths in the space that you are in that are a barrier to many people rising?
What are the myths?
Yeah.
Okay, myths, I would say that tech is not, I would say tech being overly complicated. I think people overcomplicate tech. And as I mentioned, tech is the kind of industry where you can really thrive if you're passionate about what you're doing. And that's why the research is very important. Being very intentional about what space within tech that you want to play in, and how it ties to not just your experience, but also the type of skills that you have and your ability to grow from your current skill set to the skill set that you need to now exceedingly shine within the space, right? So I think there's that complexity that people really think that it's not for everyone. I remember when I joined tech, actually, it was a lot of stigma around women being in technology. It was more a male-dominated field. Now there's a lot of women leaders within the technology space. And so seeing that has been very inspiring. And I think that, stepping away from the mindset of it being complex and really, embodying what it really brings, not just to us as professionals, but to the world, because it's really disrupting the way a lot of things are done. And if you're not in the mindset of how tech is growing, then you'll find yourself at some point not being within, reach of what's going on, even within your own industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I would really like to hear your parting shot concerning this conversation, perhaps something we missed. I'm sure there are many young people who will really want to know really key parting shot from this discussion. And so I'd urge you to look at the camera and speak to the young people following this show.
So my parting shot to any young professional, young entrepreneur who wants to get into tech is choose your path, do your research, ensure you do enough research. And when you choose your path, really stay on course. Ensure that you are committed to the journey. It is very rigorous and can be very challenging, but the rewards supersede the challenges. Stay grounded, stay focused, stay real, and welcome to the world of technology.
Thank you so much. Stay grounded, do your research, know what you really want, keep on going, keep on moving. And that has been an amazing discussion with our guests, and we're so much excited. We hope there is so much you've learned from this show. Connect one-on-one. See you next time. I've been your host, Derek Quere. Bye-bye.
Thank you.